Well, today was an interesting day. It was finally a down day, the day I was looking for, so I can show you some of the trades that I've been working on, trying to get into. I put a few more on today. Took a few off today. There were a couple that just didn't act the way I thought they should have acted, so I got out of them and stuck with the ones that were acting the way that they look like they should act, right? Um, so you can see what I look for, and you can see how I play that. The other thing is when to get out of these is very tricky, and I have to admit I think I'm still fine tuning this. But I've kind of given up on well, I've completely given up on trying to time when to get out or draw a target. I've sort of been taking the approach of get into a bunch of stocks that are acting the same way. Look for patterns and look for groups of stock to move in similar patterns. Get into a few of them at the same time, so you're sort of like spreading your risk. Is kind of my theory is there. Some of them seem to work out and some don't, and the average is you'll win in the long run. So I look to get into those stocks, get into a bunch of the stocks, get rid of the ones that seem to be failing, and try and take a profit. Depending on the situation, anywhere from 2% to looking for 5 or 6%, and that would be of my entire portfolio. So I'm using capital from my portfolio spread out among a number of different trades, following patterns, looking to keep losses very low, and looking to target a gain rather than target a specific stock price on any particular stock. So first trade to walk you through is AT&T. I got into this trade a couple days ago. You see, I got into it here at this marker. It just formed a divergence on the MACD. Seemed like a good time to get into it. I even waited till after confirmation. Sometimes I would jump up into it up here. It immediately turned around. I struggled with it all day long, trying to figure out what I should do. Because it hadn't broken this, I decided to hold on to it. The next day it gaps up higher, and it gapped up really quickly, and really prevented me from. I could have gotten out of it, but I just felt like it had already gone on this run, so I decided not to, and it started to die off all day. Luckily today, it slowly came back, and by the very end of the day, I got out of it. I took a $40 loss on it, and that would be including $40, including my trading fees. Thank God it came back down today. Gap is the next one I'm going to show you. Gap's the next one I'm going to show you. I got into it a few days ago as well. Again, I got into it at the high of what I call a divergence. I'm thinking that the distance from the top of this to where I got in was small, meaning I limited my risk. It acted very nicely and then came back up against my better judgment, I'll say, and then it just fluttered along. And then all day long, when everything else was acting weak, it got strong for 3 hours. It bought in, and it seemed to be just a low volume day, throwing everything off. But by the end of the day, I was tired of watching it flutter back and forth, so I got out of it with a $20 gain. Anadarko is one that I got into today. I got into here. I thought it was, again, forming a divergence. It looked like a nice little top here, and it got strong throughout the day. Other energy stocks like coal, BTU, and ACI were very weak all day long, and this one was strong. Chesapeake was strong as well. Chesapeake was up like 10%. So because it was acting in a strange pattern when everything else was weak, I got lucky and was able to get out of it for a $20 loss at the end of the day. So other trades that I still have going on. Monsanto, you see, I got into here. So in the beginning of the morning, I saw that this was forming a divergence. I was predicting downward movement. It had low risk to the upside. I shorted it first hour trading. NetEase was one that I got into a few days ago. I'm not sure if I told you, walked through this with you. It looked like it just had a very strong, solid run up to here. I was thinking the market was going to turn around, so I got into it. Not a normal trading pattern that I would normally trade. So there's the daily, such a strong move up. I'm still in it, and again, this is one that I considered getting out of, but because you see this red line here, this means that the yellow line, the moving average, adaptive moving average crossed over its average. It wants to come back down. I see that as negative sentiment in the stock, and it should retrace a bit. So I'm kind of holding on to it for another day. I'm looking for another day of downward movement. Next one is potash. This one I got into yesterday, um, and I got into it too early. After getting into it, I was like, I was kicking myself because I knew I got into it just a little too early. And I played around all day with, I was debating on whether to short it here at the 94 all day long, and then sure enough it pulled back nicely. So you see down here is the divergence. And what I'm hoping is that we continue on a downward day tomorrow, and that crosses over nicely. And finally, RIG, this is Transocean, came out with earnings this morning. You see how it opened down here and then gained strength all day long. I saw this as an opportunity to short because the distance here is very small, so low risk. And then here you've got a divergence on the MACD. I said, okay, let's get into it, and luckily it got weak and fluttered around all day, ending on the low. Hopefully this will continue. The earnings, they were mixed, and you never know how earnings are going to affect people's outlook on the stock. So I'll hold on to it, and tomorrow we'll see how things go. If it's another down day, I'll probably take off these positions for profit. I toyed with taking them off at the very last hour trading today. And I'm looking at employment numbers over the next 2 days that could have, those numbers could go either way. You never know when news comes out whether stocks move up or down. That's why you have to trade on these signals and take profits when you get them. I'm looking right now at a very small profit. It's like 2% of my overall capital. That's not a bad trade if you consider you're making a lot of trades. I'm hoping for more like 3.5 to 4%. So I wanted to take you through the markets just to kind of show you what I see. This is the Nasdaq 100. It formed a nice divergence yesterday and then dropped today, so that followed the pattern nicely. We'll see if it continues tomorrow. Because it finished on its lows, it should continue right through to tomorrow. And this is what I was guessing as a rebound point. This is around 1400, 1385 or so, and because this divergence formed as well, I thought it was a good time to short stocks. The Nasdaq looks almost identical. The S&P 500 has a much nicer formation here around 1,000. So 1,000 seemed to be a point that it was bouncing off of. OEX looks about the same. I guess 480 was about the resistance points, but on the S&P and the OEX, it's got this nice little hammer, inverted hammer, that kind of stays below your resistance line, and then the Dow looks almost the same.